Hello, this is Fernando Labastida. I'm here with Linh Nguyen, the CEO and co-founder of IT-Conductor. And we're excited to really get into the founding story of your founding story, Lynn, yours and David's, for how you got started with IT-Conductor. But first of all, I was just wondering if you could take us back to the beginning, like right before you founded IT-Conductor. What were you doing? What were you working on? And what gave you that aha moment, or what was that spark that got you to come up with the idea for IT-Conductor?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, when I met my co-founder, David Stavisky, he's basically always working on systems and kind of a brainchild of IT-Conductor, if you will, from a product perspective. And I was always in the consulting business, solving problems for customer one at a time. And, I run a pretty successful consulting business for, since the mid-90s. And we go through enterprise solutions and dealing with customers. So I see many pain points, and David and I, when we first met, we hit it off in terms of being able to relate the pain points of enterprise customers in IT specifically, and operations. And he was talking about, hey, why are there so much disarray or disorganization in large IT enterprises? And I remember back in the days, if you can remember, there was a kind of America's Got Talent type, show where, there's a lot of talent, and they call in and they would flood the phone line every week. Or you're getting the kind of AT&T hosting these services for IT, which is, you remember the days when there was not like kind of online app voting, anything like that. People would call in. Anyway, interestingly, we were consulting on an engagement with Sun Microsystems, and they were managing infrastructure for AT&T. So behind the scene, there were literally thousands of servers doing call and logging people's votes, right? So we're talking about every Wednesday, I believe, and it got so big that their systems went down, or they weren't able to report numbers. You can imagine, like you'd say, within an hour, you'd have who the winner is or whatever it is, and they weren't even able to do that consistently because nobody knew what systems was running what and what was down, what was up. It became to a point where such a mess in IT that literally there was a waste in thousands of servers that really nobody could tell what this one do, what does that one do, and how does that improve service or not improve service. So we saw this, we were brought in to do kind of quality management, or how to process improve this, how can we improve this delivery, because there's a lot of millions of dollars every time, they be one of these show every week. Essentially, through this, we thought, hey, we already had this idea about how to optimize service management. And we looked at this, and there was no tool out there that can easily say, pinpoint, if service is slow, what is causing the slowness? And can you go all the way from top down to even down to a single server and say, hey, that guy's dead. That's why you have degradation, or this guy's slow. So we took this concept of what IT should be in terms of optimization and say, hey, this platform that we can do is to automate kind of a centralized service management, where you have a single dashboard where you could have a top-down approach to saying, hey, what is my service? And service doesn't mean anything technical. Service could mean like finance. It could be a show that is taking on this particular dial-in type thing. That is a service. And if that's a service, then what are the components that make up this service? Because all the components are interrelated. But if you're not managing all the different points, how do you know what is the root cause? So we took this top-down and divided into infrastructure pieces, application pieces, and then IT-Conductor became the glue where we're able to say, hey, if you just have a dashboard and it's, blinking red, yellow, green, you could easily pinpoint it, and you could drill down and you can see, hey, there's a slowness over here. Somebody could go and do that or automatically fix it, right? So the vision isn't always in the observability, but what to do about it. Because people say, hey, it's bad. When do I get fixed, and when do I return to normal? But nobody could answer that question unless you know what to fix, right? It's like taking your car to the mechanic and you have no idea. He needs to plug in his computer, and you got to see the OBD code, what the code is, diagnosis, and and then maybe narrow down to 2 or 3 and then go fix that thing. He's not going to fix the entire car. It'd be too expensive and too long.
Yeah.
So that concept of just breaking down from top services down to IT components, down to the interrelationship, relationship is extremely important. So what an IT conductor is, it's not just, there were already tools that look at things, but there were not tools that look at things end to end. So
Right.
you take this and say, how an application could be running on a bunch of database, how database could be running on a bunch of, servers, and servers are running on some infrastructure or cloud, how they're all interrelated in a kind of I would call them a time correlation, if you will. Nothing just happens. Something always trickle. Like, I'll give an example. My car recently had some issues with the engine, and you can hear click, 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 and you're like, okay, you can drive for a while, and then the next day it makes a different noise, and then you're like, something's wrong, but I don't know what. And then eventually it would just stop working, right?
Yeah.
So in this area of, we would call them network relationships, something trickles, propagates until it becomes an event. So if IT Conductor can prevent this outage, can prevent this proactively, or can help you root cause analysis and then deal with mean time to repair, you literally will save organizations millions of dollars an hour of outage. And especially when you're talking about, let's say, a delivery system, a finance system, HR system, and it's
Mission
down for like an
critical.
hour. You talk an average, our customer base is typically Fortune, say 5,000 companies. They're literally average $3 to $4 million an hour in lost productivity, right? So that's why we thought, if we can create something that's simple deployed, and the thing has to be simple, it cannot be so complex that you need another team to manage. And so from there, we said, well, in order to make it simple, we have to make it pretty much agentless, meaning that we don't need to be there, boots on the ground, heavy duty install. It's like comparing to like today, you can stream a movie, right? Before you have to go to the library, you go to the Blockbuster and get a DVD. There's the time lag there.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just doing everything from a streaming, you have instant gratification almost. And that's really how the vision got started, through that.
Yeah, I love that that analogy of instant gratification, using Netflix as an example, because in this day and age, really there's no excuse for there not to be instant gratification. So I think I think that's fantastic that you came up with that. So you had that idea because of your experience with this call-in show, this sort of America's Got Talent type of show, where the Sun Microsystems servers were down, et cetera. And so then walk us through, creating the product and then like launching the company. Tell me about those milestones.
That's an interesting journey, because if you think about it today, cloud, everybody knows what cloud is, right? But when we started, when we think about instant gratification, we had this, it needs to be something cloud, something people just turn on and start using. It's simple to price, simple to deliver, but it wasn't ready. So what we did is, as I said, I was already, running a consulting company. So we said, hey, instead of waiting for the people ready, let's create this platform. David already had sketches of this platform in his mind and something of a prototype, and he showed to me, and I said, let's do it, right? So we would literally bootstrap this thing with our consulting income and started creating something and said, hey, we will deliver. If cloud is not ready, we will come to them. And literally we had companies like IBM in the early days. IBM had a large consulting business, and we would run into this problem over and over again with performance issues, these type of things. And they would engage our expertise because, my background is heavy duty kind of professional consulting in the service business. I would say, okay, instead of us solving this problem over and over again for different clients all the time, why don't we automate? We'll give you kind of a platform as a service. So you think about that word, platform as a service didn't exist until cloud came along. We actually took the servers ourselves and said, you don't need to worry about it. We will actually bring our own servers on site, plug it in, ready to go. And what was running, what you know now as IT Conductor in the cloud, existed as instances where we really shipped the server there, came in there, racked it in, network it, and we would deliver service right there with the software and the hardware included. And they would get instant service in what we were delivering, what we call as performance management as a service. So we successfully deliver a lot of these projects for companies like IBM Consulting and all that. And that's how we kind of overcome some of the early days, how something of a concept. And if you waited for the right time and you don't innovate around that, you kind of lose the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because without adoption or getting out there and testing your concepts, you lose time and you lose precious customer feedback. So we deliver this, and again and again, it became almost a standard line item in the consulting engagement that we did for IBM. It's like always like a line item, and they didn't have to worry about anything. They just say, this line item takes care of that. And we would literally have the server, have services connected, and we would do that delivery as part of the project. So, and that's how we actually started early day to validate customers that this is actually valid for large companies, for large managed service providers could leverage this service.
And so round about what year was this?
This was probably around 2010, 2011.
Okay.
Early, we had the meeting, we had talked about this stuff right around 2009, 2010. And we started doing kind of this trial, start rolling out, doing several engagements. And for probably, let's say a couple of years, we refined the concept. We improved the software that we built, and we must have been on at least like 10 different engagements where we continually refine, because you can have a great idea and you go out there and it's, flop because, it's just not practical or whatever, right? Through that, we went all the way from then to like 2013, and I turned around to David and said, hey, it's time. I think cloud is coming on. People are starting to recognize this. Let's make a cloud company. And 2014, we incorporated IT-Conductor.
Wow. That was right around the time. Well, because I know Salesforce.com got started in 1999 and 2000. And then from 2000 all the way up to 2009, et cetera, that's when they started becoming, they really started this cloud thing, with Dreamforce happening every year. And then when you came along, it was definitely before cloud was like this big thing. It was definitely pre-cloud.
Back then, you could only have, I remember just AWS, Amazon Web Services. And then there were like limited private cloud with like VMware or something, which is not, you can't take that with you. it's
yeah.
On,
yeah.
So literally, on day one, we said, hey, let's start building this. Before we went on Amazon's web service, we didn't stop building. We actually built our cloud version and hosted it ourselves, where we would deliver this service from our data center, and we ran an instance of IT-Conductor. And then in 2014, we started transitioning to a production instance, because before it was kind of like more of a engagement by certain companies, certain projects. And then when we transitioned to 2014, went full in on cloud, we put our platform on AWS, and we've been running on AWS since then as a production, because what happened is by then it's global, right? Once we put it on cloud officially, our customers come in from different places around the world at any given time, which kind of gives me a little bit of a reflection on, you asked, why I got started. It wasn't just this solving individual problem. We wanted a connected world. And this is important because people don't realize, again, this is sign of before the times when you realize in COVID that people said, oh, work remotely, because they had to, right? Out of necessity. Right. We started the company from day one saying we're 100% global and 100% remote, because our model is different. Our model is we have a connected system. So unlike any software before that, and I had resold very large enterprise deals with other software, third-party vendor software. I was a VAR. So I'm very familiar with the typical software stack. We wanted to create something different where we are constantly connected to the customer, because we realized early day, this is the most important part of our delivery. Is not that, we're building something great and it's like individually put into places. It has to be constantly, not from day one, but every single day of the service. If we can't prove ourselves to be useful to the customer by every single day earning that dollar that they pay us to provide service, we don't deserve that business. And from that point, we're saying that service is constantly connected. And I'm giving you the difference is, if you have a smart home, you have security with, ADT or whatever it is, remote monitoring, right? You're paying them to monitor your premise
in real time.
You're not there. You leave home, but you want them to be able to tell you when something's wrong in your house. why does not enterprise have this equivalent? And we said, look, we need to be constantly connected. There has to be data-driven approach. And you cannot have data in isolation. Data is always happening, always occurring. So we're always learning from the applications, the systems. And from that allows us to not only provide service to a single client, but it provides across the data sharing, meaning the learn experience in operations. There's commonality. As I mentioned, when I did consulting, I would solve the same problem over and over again, right? So now we have the ability to create automation that 80% of customers can share the use case.
Mm-hmm.
They can benefit from that, right? Because we see the data. And nowadays you see, okay, wow, when COVID came along, people shut down, they went remote. We were already remote. So it's our global workforce, our global platform, customers are everywhere, we are everywhere, and the user can be anywhere. And also our vision, and my vision particularly in this, is that we are democratizing IT service delivery, because the global workforce, as you know, skilled resources are difficult to find. In consulting, it's really hard to staff a project. We used to win large project and then scramble to get resources. With IT-Conductor, the premise is that if you digitize the knowledge through automation and you globalize it, where customer can be anywhere, the service delivery team can anywhere, or the partner service delivery team can be anywhere, but the data is real time.
Right.
You can now leverage resources worldwide in kind of a marketplace scenario to deliver the result to the customer in the real-time format, right? And this way, we are creating a workforce that is somewhat like a gig worker. If I have expertise and I live in a country that doesn't have many customers, opportunities, I'm limited on who I can work for. But if I can join a platform that's global and I can use this platform as remote eyes, ears, and hands, I can provide my expertise to a set of vetted customers, right, as part of a global kind of service delivery team. This is what we're doing today, because literally the people can be anywhere, customers can be anywhere. Really, we're providing real data that this data can be used in, let's say you're a subject matter expert in a certain field. And if we deliver the data, you could use that data to deliver your trusted advisory to a customer, right? But you have to have that data. And so this way, people can live anywhere in the world. I mean, you can go down to Mexico, just like people during COVID, they say, I can work out of, nice tropical land and provide service to my customer anywhere. Nobody knows where you are. They don't really care, right?
Yeah.
So today, the model is very acceptable. And we actually been there. We created that, more than 10 years ago.
That's actually really revolutionary. And what I think was very insightful about when you started this first of all, this remote model, that was back in the days when even MySQL, MySQL were doing the remote model. Very few companies were doing this. Now I learned that IT-Conductor was doing this. But second of all, there's kind of like that marketplace of ideas, or that the data that's shared from the common scenarios that most IT departments experience. You're able to leverage that data to then increase the knowledge and the value that you provide through real time monitoring of all your clients' data centers. I wanted to get into a little bit about so you bootstrapped the company initially, right? Did you decide to bootstrap this on purpose, or did you ever get any funding, or what was your?
Well, yeah, that's the other area where if you are kind of way ahead in where service is and you're trying to create something, and we tried early obviously to convince people that this is what we think is the best way to deliver service as a platform, and we call it everything as a platform. Everything as a service, right? The customer doesn't have to get training. They don't have to scale their people up. You just do everything for them. They just tell you what they want, right? Imagine now you come on to, I don't know, these AI, open ChatGPT and you tell it what you want. And it's like, bake me a cake, give me a recipe, and right? So think about that. And we said, hey, this is what we can do. And we got a lot of rejection. People don't believe you that, first you're talking about cloud, then they ask you, oh man, this is unsecure, people never going to give you access to their data, blah, blah. So we had a lot of pushback. And, David and I are not like, unfortunately, we're not like what do you call them? those folks that come from the Stanford, so the MIT crowd, where it's easy to get funding. So we tried that route, and then we thought, hey, we're a couple of immigrants, we're just gonna go do it because that's what we do best. So we didn't wait for that. We went and bootstrapped. We said, look, if we waited for people to actually fund us, we will miss this. So we made a commitment that, hey, we're gonna be lean, mean, we're gonna run this thing, and we'd have to work side gigs if we have to. And that's how it's been. And not that we haven't tried, but I'm saying that if I rather spend the time, if I'm not in some investor club that I have the name of some big Ivy League school, probably I would have gone on that route. But when we found that when we bootstrap and getting the early customers to pay and repay up every year and increase what they pay, we were able to have the independence that we wouldn't probably have with funding, because they're very demanding in terms of what you need to do by a certain time. We took very careful route on how we built IT-Conductor. And remember, IT-Conductor is built from ground up, meaning that every single bit and byte was created. It was not like, go borrow this, that, right? We built it up. And so we had the complete 100% control. And that is something that we're very proud of, is that the fact is, if you have the control and you have the vision, right? Doesn't matter who out there believe it or not believe it. The customer is the validating.
Right.
If you sign up a customer and they love you and they've renewed, some of our customers been on board almost from the beginning, 8-9 years, and keep renewing up. The same customer bring us the use case because they know we can deliver. And we've created automation, we've created these innovations. And today we have like multiple patents for IT-Conductor platform, US patents around this innovative cloud platform that does the automation, orchestration, monitoring, etc. Simply because we took that route, and we say, of course, we didn't get rich fast. In fact, if you think about it, most success stories you see in the news, particularly with like startups and things, they're not overnight success. They've been at least 10, 12 years in the making. So we're not, discouraged by that. We're more encouraged by the fact that we're proud of what we build. We have 100% control, and the customer's voice is the loudest, because they're the one that's saying, hey, you guys are relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly what, I think is Eric Ries talks about in, what is it? The Agile Startup, or I can't remember what the name of his book was, but anyway, I think it's about Agile startups. And he talks about how you go out there and you validate it in the market, right? So you might have a great idea and you might even go out and get venture funding, but if you're not able to get customers to pay you money for your product, then you're dead in the water. And that's what you were able to do immediately, is to get customers to come and pay you money for orchestration, monitoring, automation, etc.
Yeah. We found that a lot of companies around our time that did, get a lot of money, they went under, because there's a typical, I'm in Silicon Valley. Trust me, I know the startup ecosystem. I went to all the events. I've met a lot of people. Went to Menlo Hill, Menlo Park, all these guys, and I pitched to a lot of them. And after a while, I didn't if you don't get what I'm doing, and either I have a bad way of expressing myself, which I don't think so. And after a while, I'd say, okay, these guys who took on money, some of them actually sold out pretty quickly, made a quick bucks and went, and their vision was not fully developed. It became something else. Somebody ripped apart something else. And then there was ones that were essentially down round, because through COVID, imagine a lot of things shut down, funding became harder. If you took, kind of like the standard VC capital, if you're not showing results every 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they will shut you down essentially, right? Because you can't get another round. You either have to, do a down round and, so I wanted to focus on customers and business. I didn't want to focus on just trying to get money all the time. My job really, what I keep telling my team is, my job, I only have three things to do. One is to find money. And when I say find money, I don't mean like VC money. It could be any kind of money, right? Just funding in general. And two is to find people, find the talent. People are willing to, accept the vision, go along with it, passionate about it, and also compassionate for their customers and the team and all this. So we call it passion, innovation, and compassion. That's our kind of the company core values. Passion is you have to have passion to do well. It's extremely difficult. The innovation is obviously, you could be innovating on small scale. I'm not asking you to invent a platform, right? You could be innovating your day-to-day operations. Can I automate this? I've done it 5 times. Can I automate it? Yes, I should do this, right? And then compassion is really compassion for your customer. You got to put yourself in their shoes. You got to put yourself in your peers' shoes to understand. You get along with your team and get along with the customers. And really those things, 3 things together, core values, is why we think, okay, we didn't take on this money, but we can do very well with our core values and our core mission. Our core mission is kind of like simple, right? You want to automate the operations and make it more effective using intelligent automation, orchestration. Right. And really the end of that is that who doesn't want to automate? Who wants to do the same thing over and over again? I'm sure some people would hand up, right? But overall, in our professional life, we would rather just automate. And now I see that being echoed in the market because of this AI, right? We want to use AI to automate, blah, 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 right? I don't want to do that mundane thing day in, day out. I wanted to, take notes. And so there's certain things that AI is great for. It can do a lot of that stuff. But when it comes to really complex processes, it's not there yet. That's why when humans do something and we think about 100 steps, we need help to automate certain parts of it. And we need the logical brain for us, not AI, but our brain, to link them together in a way that makes sense. Exactly. Right? Because AI may solve little here, little there, but in order to orchestrate it end to end, it has to make sense. It has to make sense because we know the order, right? Yeah. AI will say, try this, try that, right? In enterprise today, nobody is going to let you automate anything unless you prove it's consistent, it's safe. Nobody's going to let you automatically take down systems and, just saying, hey, so that in that sense, we love automation, but we have to be very structured in our way of approaching it that has to generate results. Not talking about, the word AI operations, like what are you really doing, right? Are you really trying to improve something, replace a human, or just make a human more effective? In our case, make a human more effective. If I'm managing, today 20 systems, can I manage 100? Yes, but you need the tool to do that.
Right. So tell me about a few of the most interesting success cases that you have at IT-Conductor. I don't know, it could be 2 or 3,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think early days, I tell you a story of one of our first customer. So I said I was running a consulting business before, and when David joined me, he was actually working for one of our reseller software. He was actually one of the, consultant on a sales deal that I got involved with. And I kind of talked to him and said, hey, we're doing this over here. Anyway, he left that. Obviously, he joined me on my journey. But anyway, the customer that we actually had sold them because we were a value-added reseller. We had sold them the software. And you might know the name BMC.
Yeah.
Right? Very big company. We were doing a lot of monitoring, and we had sold a big deal. We went implemented, David and I implemented for this customer, the whole kind of enterprise monitoring deal. And we did a good job there. But then after that, we were done. We left, because in the old days, you do something, you implement it, and you sold the software, you did a consulting, and you onboard, and you left. Several years later, and that was under my old company, consulting firm, when we created a new company, out of the blue, we got contacted by them saying, hey, our stuff is kind of needs some maintenance and upgrades and BMC, wants this money and blah, blah, blah. And coincidentally, they said, we thought that you guys can come back and help us upgrade and all this stuff. And we said, you know what? I have a better idea. Why don't we replace instead of upgrade? We have something that we've been cooking for some years now. And we've launched that in 2014. Maybe you guys want to look at this as an alternative. And they said, sure, why not? We trust you guys because we built that credit with them, right?
Right.
And so that was the journey that how we actually got started deploying IT-Conductor into a company you might recognize, Medtronic.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Medtronic. Yeah.
So they had a division in diabetes that this is one that's not listed on our website because of, certain legal people don't want us to list the detail, but I can talk about it. But essentially, we went and replaced the entire observability platform. We managed that to roll IT-Conductor out. And then that was the first step in the replacement of observability. Then the second step was to automate. And once you have the data and you monitoring and all that, you learn from it and you know what the pain points are in operations. Then the customer started bringing you, hey, now you know all this. I have this pain point here. This thing's break or this thing takes too much effort. Can you help me? And then we started automating these scenarios for them one by one. And not only that, we did the engagement. We never actually went back on site, by the way. The first engagement we did under consulting, we spent, 3 months on site, David and I. And just to prove, when we went to IT-Conductor, we said, look, you don't have to pay for any expense. You do anything, we'll get you on board all remote. And that's what we did. We transitioned them 100% over to IT-Conductor and deliver the service. And again, today they've been on board for 8 years or something.
Wow. And so what were some of which modules within IT-Conductor did you implement over there?
We obviously, but BMC was well known for their monitoring. So we replaced all the monitoring for SAP with IT-Conductor completely. Everything that they had, we monitor, from applications to database to operating systems to processes. So that was our flagship. When we first created IT-Conductor, we talked about automation, right? But we also talked about service, again, importance of service. So we provide them what we call service level management. They could know if a particular group of people was slow, that were going to complain. Maybe they're going to know that their month end is slow and they're going to get complaint from finance, So this proactive service management was the piece we put in first. And that's kind of our flagship offering. IT-Conductor was first saying, hey, this is the easiest use case for us. That's the most obvious pain point that customers, it's very in their face, right? If their user telling them things are slow, they got egg in their face.
Right.
If systems went down, they got egg in their face, right? So how do we address? So it became very apparent the first use case for us should be monitoring. And so we applied that. And my background, I've been working with SAP for 32 years now. So I said, hey, look, there's lots of problems over here. It's complex. It's hard to understand. It's many different stacks and it's dispersed. By the way, all the companies that use it, again, are in this class where if they're down for an hour, it's like $3 to $4 million.
Yeah.
Of loss.
Yeah. Right.
So for us, we applied that automation use case first to monitoring. And that's what we got the customer on. But today they're using full-fledged automation with us.
And so with full-fledged automation, what does that mean? Like what was the before scenario and what was the after scenario?
Yeah, I could give you an example. For instance, if you're doing change management, right? And in fact, we launched a branded solution. It's been around for a while, but it's called CHAI, Change Automation Intelligence. So IT-Conductor CHAI, and it's essentially a way to manage change. So you think about it's constantly in IT or in business in general. There's always change in code, or if you want to deploy something, if you want to restart a server, it's a change request, right? So this process could be managed by IT-Conductor. Primarily in SAP, there is a concept of what they call change through transport. Transport is a mechanism of promoting code from one system to another. Like you do it in dev, develop it, and then you promote it to QA for testing, and then eventually you promote it to production.
Production environment.
The business has a program, they need to run a report, something, somebody develop it, needs to get promoted through. This mechanism of transport is very manual, that developer will request and somebody would, look at it, approve it, and then the basis, which is the kind of the IT admin in SAP term, would have to physically move this object from A to B and do that manually. And imagine doing that, 50 times a week manually. It's very kind of mundane task, and it's also error prone. And also there's not a lot of, I would say, reporting or real-time tracking, because if you're the developer, you would want to know when you put in a request, when it gets somewhere. So then you can notify somebody else to start testing, right? But if you're just doing manually, you depend on the guys busy, like trying to do 50 things and then sending out email. And then if it fails, Everything went fine, no problem. When it failed, it's like, what happened? You tell me the problem so I can go fix it and redo it, resubmit it. Anyway, we automate this thing, and the chai for SAP transport automation today, a developer could come self-service, put in a web form. I need to move this. It gets routed through workflow to the approver based on his manager or that area of application. Somebody would get it in the inbox. They would need to review and then approve it. And once it's approved, it becomes part of the workflow into downstream systems. So this change management now happens automated. Nobody gets involved except the requester. There is no technical people involved in moving anything. Compliance reporting and auditing who approved what, when, and if there's something failed, the logs are clearly there for them to access and see what the issue is. They don't need to go ping somebody to find out. So that's an example of what we call like automation, right? That's one example. There are many other examples where we save something that could take 100 steps to do. For instance, the idea of, in quality assurance, you always want to test with some real data to simulate something that would happen in real life in production. But you, of course, can't test in production.
Right.
So there's this concept of system copy and refresh. So you're refreshing a production system into a non-production so that quality people can use it to test. Maybe they have an upgrade plan and they need to test against some real life data. This itself, in this term, if you want to refresh a system, it can be as complex as 100 steps that takes a week to complete.
Right.
And you would, touch on 5 different people or teams, from infrastructure to database to, IT admin to change man, before you even get the system over to the testing team to be ready for them to do QA. So we've shortcut this whole thing down to literally hours by automating it. So wait
a minute. So it went from days or weeks to hours?
It went from like 7 days, and especially when you have 3 or 4 of these to do, because typically, if you think about interrelationship in business systems, it's not standalone. Systems are interconnected to other systems. Like you might have an order processing, all right, and you may have a back-end finance that's doing the billing, and then you might have some data warehouse that's doing some analytics. And these systems, typically, they are refreshed at the same time in order to have kind of, synced data, right? You can run a report here and the data's not here if you took a different time. So typically, the request is to do a refresh in combination. And imagine now you have a small team. Now you're asked to do 3 of these at the same time. There's one guy that's doing context switching, trying to do stuff.
Yeah.
So there's inherent delays. You do something and you wait for security, or maybe you wait for database guy to do the database backup and restore, and then you pass to somebody else to do some other components to configure it. Because after you refresh, you have, it looks like production, but it can't be production. It has to be kind of like cleansed and, reconfigured. So it doesn't point to like sending checks out to, your vendors or whatever. So one of the things there is that this 100 step could take a week, right? And it could be complex because you might have 3 or 4 of these running at the same time. And now we just basically say, hey, schedule it. It will get done automatically, and it will get to some point. You can even have control where don't go past this point. Let me manually review what's done so far and then click continue, and then it will continue. So the flexibility of it, it's not that automation like this couldn't be done, but the flexibility, what we introduce is, think about it. We're not on site. Customer's not on site either. This is done agentlessly through essentially talking to the components, orchestrating them. So that's a whole concept about orchestration is like, you get the data, you make decisions, you decide in the workflow where to go, and then you have interactions when needed. And then you can also have issues sent out when something's not working right, because customers always have changes in their business that, hey, something just broke because that step, didn't have the right data or whatever. And it would just stop and let people know, there's something wrong. You need to, but imagine you cutting down. They were so long and laborious that they didn't do it officially. QA team wanted almost like every 3 months. They didn't do it for like a year. And the longer you do it, longer you leave it, people forget how to do it, even if you wrote it down.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we took that and say, hey, now you can almost on demand get your QA systems up to date. And that's kind of an automation that we now call kind of a system refresh automation, if you will. So that's an example where We took something that's very complex, and not only complex, but if you go company to company, they do it differently.
Yeah.
They might have different technology. They might have different database, different cloud. So you need to be able to flexibly adapt a best practice process, but have ways to kind of configure the way they want it to do. So we do that type of kind of service delivery as automation as a service.
Yeah. So that QA process, so I typically think of QA as when you're building software, when you're building applications, et cetera. Is this related to the change management within a system like SAP or some similar system, or?
Well, change management is happening every day. This is just one type of change. This is like, I want to refresh. I put a request in, but then there's the work to actually get the QA system refreshed from production. So it's two separate offering, if you will. And again, there's other examples where it's always easy, as I mentioned earlier, it's always easy to prove value when there's a fire. We are very good at going into, say, a situation where the customers may be down, maybe slow, maybe not able to meet their end, user business needs. And we come in and we can say, hey, instead of installing a bunch of stuff, we'd like plug our stuff in, give us a day or whatever, and then we'll tell you what's wrong or where the possible areas to focus on. So even during COVID, we had scenarios where everybody know a company like Moderna. Their shipping goes skyrocket, understandably. They use SAP, they deliver all these vaccines and things like that. And it's very important to them to know, like, in near real time performance of their logistics and orders, but it wasn't happening. It was just like some bottleneck somewhere, and there's lots of people throw their hat into the ring and everything. But we came along with some basic monitoring and expertise. It's not only the monitoring that we deliver. This monitoring came from a very long, lengthy kind of expertise that we built into the platform, right? Best practice on that. With this, we deliver kind of a trusted advisory service to them. It was kind of a spot thing where we came in and said, hey, your issues here, performance here, your service kind of unreliable here, these parts here, there. And, implemented some kind of monitoring for them and ability to change process. So I don't always talk about tools and platform, but it has to also people process.
Right. People process.
Because if people can leverage tool to improve their own performance because they don't need to have all the knowledge, that's improvement in the people, right? And then the process, if they don't have a process, you can't automate it. You're automating things that would just break because the process is bad, right? So out of the box, if you can get some process that 80% cooked to best practices, they can just customize 20%, right? Or refine it over time. So the idea is to go in there with this kind of hotspot, identify it and solve the problem. That's another scenario. We had also, similarly, people would know a company like Home Depot, right? Same thing. It was one of those spot things. They had issues getting data from A to B. Didn't know where the problem was. There was a lot of backlog, latency. You can imagine how much stuff goes into their stores and transactions, every sales item. Again, similar thing. We went in with IT-Conductor, built them a nice dashboard with all kinds of, here's where your latency is, here's your backlog, here's where your system problems or your connectivity issues are to the data source and the data type. And we built this in record time and deliver something that never existed for them, right? So some of these are like end customer type examples. We also have examples where we have large managed service provider. Remember, IT-Conductor isn't just for one customer. It's to globalize the view. If you are a managed service provider where you are daily managing, dozens or hundreds of customers globally, you could be facing an issue where every one of them look different. And if you don't have a global tool or platform to like singly deal with tickets, deal with performance issue, deal with change management, deal with these automation use cases, you're literally just like scrambling to put people in for particular customers and then another set of people, and they never talk to each other. They don't have tools. There's nothing in common. So we're innovating around what we call managed service providers because we believe they can leverage the tool to do more. It's like we're not building iPhones to sell to individuals. So you build them to sell to a Verizon on AT&T.
Right,
and
exactly.
they deal with the mass.
Retailers,
right?
Exactly.
And if the tool allows them to service like each phone that's wrong, they know. So if you have a platform that does delivery as well as kind of the sales endpoint to end customers, that's where our global volume actually takes really a flight. Because managed service providers make the most impact because they have customers, they have pain points that are very common. So they need tools to help themselves, not just one customer at a time.
Right. Wow. And it seems like as though if you can help, and when you say managed services providers, you're probably thinking of, are you talking about like Cognizant or KPMG or?
Yeah, all of them qualify. You got system integrators, you got managed service provider, two class. Some of them are the same, really. Like you talk about all of these guys, they typically have a consulting business. So of course they know the pain points, right? Then they typically have a managed services where, customers say, hey, why don't you manage this for me? Right. Yeah. So they have kind of both. And then they provide also advisory, like, hey, what's the best tool for this type of job? So we engage in multiple capacity with both the system integrators as well as the managed service provider. There are some that are just, all they do is managed services. They don't consulting, whatever. But now they kind of melding the big guys. They call them global system integrator, GSIs. They typically have both the consulting and the managed services and the advisory kind of auditing type thing. And they have the needs that you would see thousands of their customers have in common, right? Because if you talk to each customer that they manage, they express almost the same pain points. I have performance issue. I have service resilient availability issues. I have, manual process issues that needs to be automated. I want to be faster. I want to be leaner, all of that stuff. Right? I want to save money on cloud by just telling me what things is not being optimally used. Maybe help me with my capacity management, see where I can slim down system, maybe help me scale up stuff when it needs to be like month end or something, or maybe around like Black Friday or something. So these are all kind of common challenges that really should be solved from a software service delivery as a platform.
Yeah. Can you hold on one second? I got to get the door. I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
hey, so I wanted to change direction a little bit. What are the most low-hanging fruit, I guess, or the most common scenarios where when you come in and you talk to a possible new client, et cetera, what are some of those low-hanging fruit scenarios where you see what they're going through and you say, I could solve that immediately?
Yeah. It's almost always a pain point they had recently or still going on, right? When I say get the house in order, it's kind of like the first put out the fire. There's something on fire. And that list of fire normally includes three things. I normally say first is an availability issue. Something is down. Now think availability. People think, oh, something's not available. But actually it's more like maybe it's up, but it's so slow. It's useless. Like you have the abandoned cart type thing where you like, I'm trying to add and I can't check out. It goes in a loop. It has an error, whatever. That's not available to you, right? Even though it's, there. So that's number one thing is kind of managing the availability of something. And then almost always it's a performance problem because the performance is kind of like we are in this, like I said before, we need it now, right? And it doesn't matter how fast you make the system go, eventually somebody will complain it's slow for them because some people are like power users.
Right.
So we have the scenario where, okay, I've got a availability issue. I've got a performance problem. I don't know where, I don't know why. And sometimes it happens at 2 a.m. I have no idea. I wasn't there, whatever, right? So almost the same problem is that something is happening when you're not looking. And this is where we think system management has to be methodical, has to be real time, and it has to be in context. The context is that if you don't know what happened at 2 a.m., you need something that can relate for you. If I say there was a problem, there was performance that spiked, can you give me all the things that were abnormal at that time? And once you give it to me, give me the chart to show me how it trend up to that. Because the things don't just happen, right? Most things do have a path. And so we would say, availability and then performance, but performance is it's a wide area. We want to say performance in its full context, not just point me to an alert and say, oh, my response is bad. I'm like, yeah, but what? So we say, okay, root cause analysis, and it's automated root cause where I just click a few buttons and I get down to kind of 30,000 feet down to like almost ground level. to find out what the bad boy is, who created a cascading effect. So that's number two. And number three is there was just a huge amount of alerts that customers start to get numb.
Right.
Okay, so one of our motto is like minimize noise, maximize performance with IT-Conductor.
Mm-hmm.
Minimize noise is like if the noise are just noise versus a real problem. And how would you know that? If you correlate things, you would know something is highly correlated to a problem or not. Right. If it's not, it's noise. Yeah. And if you have a way to filter out the noise, you're minimizing that. And while you're minimizing that, right, it gives you a direct path to how to maximize the performance. So when I say you have 5 alerts, are those alerts high priority, medium, low? Which one of them seem to be related because they happen in series? Was there a spike in frequency of that particular type of alert? Can I give you some context, right? So this is what we do with alerts. We kind of associate context when things happen, how often they happen. And that way you can eliminate a lot of noise and filter out completely where you zone into now only 1% of the entire noise exists in the system. SAP is extremely noisy system. It can have 1,000 things going on at the same time, especially when systems have 1,000 users on there banging away at it. You want to narrow in on only the top few percent of that. Right. And how do you do that? So over time, it's a learning analytics where you're saying, hey, look, I'm showing you patterns of how things happen. This looks abnormal. Drill into abnormal. Find out what's abnormal. Is it important? If not, get rid of it, right? So that way, you're just, nobody wants to listen to music and have like all these background noise and dogs and cats and doors and, delivery guy. They say, no, that's not important. I just want to listen to the pure sound of whatever, right? Same thing, you're driving. You want to listen to the engine. Yeah, you want to feel that, right?
You guys want to listen to the air, yeah.
Yeah. And these guys, it's funny, like they drive these great cars, but they pump up the volume of their music so loud that you're missing the driving experience. You can sit home and listen to that music. Why are you in there? Why aren't you listening to the hum of the engine?
Yeah.
The same thing. I run marathons and stuff like that. And I used to say, hey, I don't run with music. I used to in the beginning because I needed some motivation, but I got unplugged and I could hear nature and I enjoy it more.
That's how I run. Yeah. I like to run with the ambience noise of the outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What it sounds like is that what you were talking about, SAP being noisy and, getting rid of being able to sort of see through the alerts. It kind of reminds me of a hospital room, where you have all the beeps and the alerts, et cetera, that are going is like, so many things are going on. How do they know when there's an actual emergency going on? So.
Yeah, that's where actually I think automation AI has a lot of use for, because AI can weed through and tell you what noise is actually important, right? Elevate it up and say, hey, in the past pattern, when this thing happens, like maybe your EKG or whatever goes off, that's important. Everything else is not, right?
Yeah. So in your growth with IT-Conductor, tell me some of the challenges you've had and how you've overcome them with growing the company.
Yeah, I would say as an underdog, kind of bootstrap where you don't have a lot of money for lawyers and things like that. Some of the big challenge we normally face in enterprise is there's a long sales cycle. Enterprise always throw up these huge, procurement process, red tapes, clients. And in the early days, I told you, because they're not ready for cloud, they always think like we're unsecure. So first, always they bring a security team that's probably like 20 people and try to kill you. Like, no, this is not secure, right? So we had a lot of those where they just say, no, this stuff is no. And so we had to overcome that by proving to them that it's secure, and that's takes time, energy, and effort to do that. But it's in the long run, we now say, hey, now you have those security questions. I have an FAQ. I can dump a 50-page you about our compliance and security standards and things that we meet. So that was one of the things. The other interesting thing is actually it's not the technology, but on the legal side. Large enterprise, big procurement process, you get down to the T's and the I's of terms. it's always like they bring, I'm not kidding you. I mean, days where I sat down, there's me and my counsel, and there's like 7 lawyers on the customer side. I mean, they're like trying to kill you by, basically paperwork, right? Oh,
My
here's your
goodness.
agreement. No, here's our agreement, 50 page instead of a 10-page thing.
Yeah.
And that was just, for me, it's basically red tape,
Yeah.
enterprise, corporate bureaucracy stuff. So my lawyer is funny. He's like, Lin, man, he doesn't let down. He doesn't, stand down. He persists. And literally, they were pushing terms that were just not something I would take. And I would literally say, take this, I'm walking away. Because when you do believe in your platform, you believe that the user can benefit from it, that you have a sponsor, technical sponsor inside the company, you need to stand your ground, because literally the lawyers would just kill the deal, right? So yeah, those are some couple of challenges. But one on technical side is, obviously, if you are building it yourself, you have limited resources. We don't have 100 people on our development team, whatever. One of the hardest challenge for us is obviously as a startup. If people in startup know this, you wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
And, my team, we expect them not to do one job, and they have to love it. They have to love the fact that they can do many things and they can actually grow their own career, their own skills. Because many people come in and say, I'm a programmer, I'm a marketing, and I'm like, no, you're not. You work for a startup, and you do what's needed. You put on hats, you learn it. You don't have to be perfect, but we have to eat our own dog food. We can automate where we can to be efficient. And that's one of the things I drive my team heavily on. We have to eat our own dog food. We have to talk the talk and walk the walk, and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's very hard. If you're competing, and again, most of our competitor in this space, 2 or 3 tools we can replace in a single customer. IT-Conductor has gone into multiple customers and say, those 3 tools, you don't need them. You can replace with IT-Conductor. Now, you're talking about each of those tools are multi-billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
And they fight hard, right?
Yeah.
They will throw sales teams out there with, dinners and free tickets to some exhibition, whatever, right? So we fight all that. And that's one of the challenges. Like you'd really have to stand your ground, push your agenda, tell them why in clear English, why they would benefit. And not from day one only, but like for the next 7 years. So if a real IT or management gets it, they will not try to get your value out the first year. They will try to get your value for the next 5-7 years, because that's where you shine. You don't automate from day one without understanding your existing process, your existing data, what's deficient in your architecture. You automate over time, but you have a goal where you get to that point, right? And you got to stick around for that. So we all want instant gratification, but we have to do the work. If you are so in shape and you have everything in order, great, right? But very few of them. So that's why we find dealing with in our competition is we are the underdog. All the other guys out there are large, kind of big guys. And sometimes they will bully you, they'll threaten you and all kinds of stuff. And, after 10 years of doing this, we're not fazed by it. We could create a new solution to disrupt a product that's been there for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I could go on and on and on, but that's why we have next week scheduled. And, I have a lot of, golly, we have an hour and 3 minutes worth of content here to create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a cascade of content. I also want to have, if you're okay with this, I want to have calls with your marketing team, Paulina and what's
Danica,
et cetera, and talk to them as well.
Yeah,
because I want to understand their processes and make sure that I integrate well with what they're already doing.
Okay, good. Yeah, schedule that. They know it's coming.
Yeah. And then I will send you the video that I did for my client. That basically what I'm offering is it would be just part of the package. It's not something extra. It would just be part of the package. And I'm going to continue analyzing some positioning and messaging things related to IT-Conductor, because I think that I have some ideas as to
Great. Good to hear.
For that. Okay, so
I appreciate the your perspective on things. So I'd be very curious to know, what your thoughts are, and from outside, again, at the box looking in.
Yeah, what technology did you base IT-Conductor on? Is it on the LAMP stack?
No, actually, we create everything from Java, and it's an agile development, method. So David actually manages the entire stack, and we are now in the process. Actually, we cut over to complete like CI/CD pipeline where we automating deployments. So ideally, what you're doing with IT-Conductor, and this is another thing that's important with IT-Conductor, it's like a moving train that never stops. We, on our service level agreement, have like a 99.99 or something percent, but really we take about 2 hours of outage the entire year because we have innovated around the fact that we can change wheels on a moving car on a train, and we do maintenance, and we kind of really have zero impact on customers. So that's what is interesting, is that in today's world, like I talk about availability all the time. So we eat our own dog food. We have to make sure our stuff is like resilient, and we can do maintenance without taking it down. If we do, it's very small impact, like just because we are forced by, let's say, a cloud vendor to update something. But yeah, we build our own stack. We're not on any kind of we made it independent so that we're not tied to, let's say, a cloud platform like AWS, even though we run on there. All the technology we build is revolve around our architecture.
Wow. That's actually amazing. And that's amazing, especially for a small bootstrapped team.
Yeah, because we didn't go to, we could have gone to something like, Salesforce and use their, what is it? They call X-Force. What is it? The platform, the development platform. Somebody's development platform somewhere. What we know, that's why David is a genius when he kind of came about how we create this thing. And everything you see in our technology, like the GUI, is self-generated. It's not like self-rendered based on, the objects, and it's not like somebody sitting there trying to like screen paint something or whatever. So it is somewhat very agile in that sense. So we can roll out code very quickly, and we can do it with very minimum impact to customers. And that's kind of the reason why they never have to worry about it. They never worry.
So I just wanted to clarify one thing before I let you go. The change management scenario you talked about with Medtronic, or basically with all these enterprises, I think, is the situation. But with the change management, you were talking about promotion, right? So promotion of code so like you were using the analogy of a dev operation where it goes from development to testing to production, which when you're building applications is automatic. But in the enterprise, it's still pretty manual, like when you're just...
Pretty manual. Yeah, you don't push code unless you got like your approval, your change board approval, your objects have been cleanly pushed to somewhere for testing, and all of that stuff, because you have a fallback plan, all that. So, change for us is three types of things, not just code, right? It's also configuration. Like you change some configuration, it's a change. Or if you are deploying some new software, right? That's a change, right? But that doesn't push code. It's just deploying a system. Like, oh yeah, I need a new box over here to do something, right? That is standardized kind of we call infrastructure as code deployment. So we're not talking about change just for the sake of recording the change. We're talking about change as an end-to-end automation, so that the activity itself could be anything, could be SAP, non-SAP, whatever. But the change you can talk and express in English. The work that does it gets to some level of activity where it happens using an automation step, so that you don't have to get to that point and then, manually you go there and do something, right? So these type of things where you have code is one, configuration is the other one, and then you have deployment of systems or even maintenance of systems, because you may take the system down for patching, for security, vulnerability or something. That's a change that should be automated, and you should be doing this more often. And the reason you don't do it because it's manual and it's scary, and then they don't do it. And so then a lot of systems are vulnerable because they don't patch security patches often as they should.
Okay. And I'm sorry, it's okay, already...
No, great. Thank you.
What was that?
No, I know time's up.
But I know I have one more question, even though it's 9 minutes past. If you don't have a call to do right now or anything, I just...
Sure. So I can take the question.
Okay. we talked about the most common low-hanging fruit scenarios. What is the most acutely painful or urgent scenario that you see out there that like people have to solve right away?
I see the problem. This, and then again, it's when you say important or acute, it's actually by perspective, right? If you depend who you talk to. If you talk to a customer and they have three teams, they have application team, they have security team, and then they have some compliance team. They will give you different answers, right? Our approach is not to dictate to them what's important out of those three or four or whatever. Our answer is that whatever their importance is, it can relate to us, because whether you are talking about application management or you're talking about like security compliance, or you're talking about some development upgrade type, whatever scenario, operational challenge, IT-Conductor is that platform. Because like I say, if you replace three or four of these with a single platform, you could solve all these problems within one. And that creates a very efficient end-to-end process. So, but I see one that customer neglect a lot of, and I see a big opportunity besides what I mentioned, change management and all that. Because change is like people don't, it's like, it's boring until it becomes important. Like you see CrowdStrike, how it went out and rolled out and broke the airlines. And, that was a change management,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't trickle up until something bad goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Something bad, and then it breaks everything, and, so it has to be something you do on a proactive basis, right? Because change is like you are deciding to change, so you shouldn't manage the process. So it doesn't sound as urgent, but if you don't do it correctly, it can bring down entire stack of stuff and people start getting, the boot. So that's one thing. The second thing is security. And we know in corporate world, as I mentioned before, we get all kinds of challenges on our platform because security team, and rightly so, right? Because data, as we said, is the number one thing any company's on. If you talk to Meta, what do they own? They own data.
They own data.
Right? So security is extremely important. And therefore, a lot of companies, what is really burning is that they neglect security aspects. And I don't mean by putting up firewalls and things like that. That's, very common. But things like compliance, if you forgot your password and you have to call into help desk and they have to challenge you with your identity before they reset and tell you whatever, that is a process that maybe on average costs, let's say 30 minutes for somebody and somebody at the other end, help desk. But then again, if you don't do it, not just because of process, but you do it and then you forgot that there are compliance issue that somebody could literally fake it and not be the right person, you're compromising security, right? So let's say I automate this by, I know that you logged out, you went on vacation, you came back, we detect that you locked yourself out. We will auto unlock you without any help desk ticket, but only you, the right you, will have access to the email that we will send you to your corporate that can get in again. Right. And by the way, it's logged as an audit now. So both people know that this user locked themselves out and is now unlocked, and it's been admin compliance logged. So this is an example of security where there's systems that are going unpatched because they don't know how to maintain it and patch it automatically, and they have minimum downtime. So they end up not doing it. And then there's systems that have bad configuration. You just like, oh, let the door open. Okay, fine. I'm going to let my guard down because either I don't know what I'm doing, or if I know I'm doing, but I'm just too slow because I have thousands of systems to manage manually. Then you have a security problem. And you know what? Security problem is similar to change problem. You don't know it's bad until you've been broken in. Like any house that get robbed, you know that, right? You're like, oh, it was fine until it got robbed.
Right.
So these things where it's just, now we get numb to the fact that companies just big data. They got cyber hacked and, whatever.
Yeah.
So for us, it's not even about preventing the incident. It's about minimizing impact of the incident.
Right.
So if you detect that somebody's already in your system, how do you minimize the impact? How do you shut down things? How do you automate shutting down systems so that you can minimize the spread? How do you help customers recover? What is the latest backup that you can recover to? How do you automatically deploy this recovery? How do you maybe even help you coordinate a failover from your primary site to a disaster recovery or business continuity site? Because this one is now kind of compromised.
Yeah.
These type of questions to me are the big problems. And it may not be something small that's fires burning, but it is something that have a big problem where I think IT-Conductor plays a part in helping automate this process and also be able to track. So every single day there's a NIST database, the security that the government publishes all the vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Who has time dedicated to go looking at that? Some companies, large company can afford it. Small company, they're in trouble. They're not keeping up and they're ignoring it, but they're literally vulnerability that comes out all the time, kind of like your desktop. We have patched and, downloaded the latest, a scan version for you, right? You want to automate enterprise kind of like that,
Yeah.
right? And if you're not doing it, you are vulnerable. And when the thief comes, he's not going to go and just blindly hack something. They're going to go to the one that's the weakest and say, hey, look, this guy's is down revision, so let's go for him, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's fascinating. That is fascinating. I thank you so much for your time here. I'm going to, like I said, reach out to Danica and Paulina, and then I'll create the content for this week, and then we'll have the call next week.
Okay, great.
Same time next week, and hopefully David can join us next time as well.
Okay, thank you so.
All right, talk to you later.